My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm currently a regent. I love folk music, blues music, and I love singing and playing with other people.
My name is Ian Peoples. I'm a Jesuit regent. I'm kind of a football fanatic. Most of my weekends are spent watching at least a few games. I'm probably one of the biggest Lionel Messi fans. Hello and welcome back to MagisTalk. I'm your host Ian Peoples, and I'm joined by my co-host and brother Jesuit Dan Finucane. Hi Dan.
Hey Ian. And in the middle between us we've got Father Pham, and he is visiting Belize this week as part of his work as our formation director, and we'll hear a little bit more about what that job entails, but real short, it just means that he helps us young men in formation as we're going through this process of being Jesuits. And so we'll hear a little bit more about that later. But Father Hung also wears the hat of director of the Office of Ignatian Spirituality in Denver, Colorado. And prior to that has worked as a teacher in a few different contexts, high school level, and most recently, before he took this job, was a theology professor at the Jesuit School of Theology in Berkeley, California. So, Father Hung, we're really happy that you could be with us today. Thanks for being here.
No, it's good to be here. Thanks Ian and then. Yeah.
Now, Father Hung so you are living in Denver usually. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, just before you came to Belize, I understand you were in Florida.
That's correct.
And then you came to Belize. I'm wondering, did you intentionally plan your trips to the tropical or subtropical places around this time on purpose?
I think you kind of read my mind. No, I call it more like the tropical tour. Get away from the winter.
Yeah, sure. And late winter, right?
Yeah.
Is spring peeking through in Denver right now?
A little bit.
Okay.
When I left Denver, it was snowing.
Oh, wow.
So welcome to sunny Belize.
Yeah, it's always good to be here.
Peeking through, is that a mountain pun there, Ian?
No, not at all. Didn't even pick that up.
Oh, okay.
Dan loves puns.
I do.
Well, Father Hung, again, thanks for being with us.
You guys have a good fun time here. Fun.
We have a good time. Yeah.
Okay.
Dan and I work together like 6 days a week, so we have to learn how to have fun.
That's right.
All right.
So one of the ways we usually start out our conversation with our guests, Hung, is to ask them about their faith life growing up. So how did faith and prayer, what role did it play in your life growing up?
No, I think it's for us. I mean, you probably know that I grew up in Vietnam, so right after the war. So faith and prayer are very much part of our life because there are days that we go by and that's things we relied on. So it's not even a matter of asking that; it's the matter of part of our life, and that's what keeps us going. So going to church and praying is very much part of the whole daily routine. Mm-hmm. That probably, my mom just brought us up and then that's what we do. So, it's something you grow up with, you don't ask that, mm-hmm. Only later on you ask about faith and prayer. But those are the times that, growing up as kids, it's like, well, this is part of daily routine. You don't ask that question.
It's just the rhythm of the day.
Exactly, Yeah. So waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, just weather like this in Belize. So start with Mass and then going to school. And then after the whole school in the afternoon, again, Mass at about 5. So 5, and that's where we are. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I've always been impressed by, I had Vietnamese friends growing up and Vietnamese Jesuit brothers, and just the how strong the communities are, like the bonds of the Vietnamese community in whatever city I think I've ever seen in. It seems to be always very, very strong, and there's a lot of support in that community for one another.
If you know a little bit of background in Vietnam, right? So Christianity is a minority, and also too after the war. So the combination of both, with communists took over, right? So if you don't practice it, you're gonna lose it. So that forced the community to bond, like, you know, taking mass, taking our sacramental life very seriously, because we don't use it and then the government will take it away. That's one. And the other one is that being part of the minority, we tend to kind of bond a little bit better, because this is where we are, you know, like the celebrations in terms of Christmas and Easter, the rhythm. So those kind of more like outside factors really helping us, you know, to kind of like build that bond. Yeah.
So kind of related to that, you know, how old were you when you moved to the States then?
I was 16.
16. And you know, moving to the States then and having to adjust to a different culture, a different group of cultures really. What was that like? And you know, as you've gotten older and lived in a bunch of different places, like, how has it been moving and adjusting to different cultures, given the strength of the culture that you were raised in and grew up in?
No, I think it's, I think it'll be a good kind of like experiment like here, right? So you imagine it's on the tropical like this and hot. I mean, I think we in flip-flop, you know, like shirt like this. And all of a sudden I came to Denver in like November. Like the end of November is biggest snowstorm. So you can see my first time seeing snow also too. So you can see the huge contrast. Like that's one thing about weather. The biggest thing is like to me when I was 16 is, you know, Asia, you see a lot of people on the street. Just, you know, we're a small country with right now it's about 100 million people of the size of like, let's say like California. So you can see like everybody on the street and it's warm weather and an open air window. Like here in Belize, right? And came to the Denver in November. You look out the window, there was nobody. And for a little while, I just got like, God, I think we live in a cemetery. There's you know, there's everybody in this, you know, house and things like that. So that's just like more out. But I think the harder thing is like saying goodbye to friends. And you know, 16 is when we make some meaningful friendship, right? And then right at that time, then left and then came to the US and start all over again, you know, so that's just that. So the world basically turned it upside down in that sense. But now back to the first question you asked, I think I'm so glad that's a thread that keep going, because that's one of the things we know in the US, and even at the time I didn't understand a lot of English. We continue to go to church, and that, you know, keep us, that's a constant thread.
Did you have a Vietnamese priest when you came to Denver?
We have a Vietnamese parish, but nearby my house, there was more like the English American church. So we walk there. Like we keep daily mass and So it's just, you know, the first questions and then what you asked, I think is the whole changing and meeting my dad again when, you know, I left when I was 6 and then now I'm 16. I mean, there's not even that relationship that just like have to be renewed and then, you know, get to know my dad again. So just basically the whole world is turned upside down in that sense. Yeah.
So your dad was waiting for you in the States?
In Denver. He sponsored us.
He sponsored to get you to the States?
Because right after the war of 75, he came to the US and then he sponsored all of us over 10 years after.
It's about mid-80s, 85, 86.
Yeah, when the two countries like open relationship a little bit.
And how many of you and your siblings were there that came over?
My mom and 7 of us.
Wow.
So 4 my sister and 2 my brothers and myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, kind of again touching on the faith and how that really bonded you all together. Well, then you took the step of entering the Jesuits eventually, but what got you to that point? What led you to enter the Society of Jesus?
Yeah, I guess now looking back, right? We all look back. I think my religious vocation, I grew up with a Salesian in Vietnam. So, I mean, they were very good about working with poor children. I mean, that's what this charism of Salesian, right? So I grew up in Salesian parish. So they taught me music and sport, soccer, ping pong, all that, and basic faith.
Tennis too?
Not yet.
Because, not yet?
Because that we don't have tennis in Vietnam, right? So, So growing up, and it just more like, like in the choir and then altar server and thing like that. So very familiar with the church, familiar with religious, order. But I never thought about Jesuits because the Salesians are like Jesuits all the way up there, intellectual. We don't talk about those guys. So, and then came to the state, sort of kind of forget about these things because at first it's like the matter of survival. And then going to school, learn the language, and so the idea of religious life kind of fade a little bit. But to long story short, I fortunately kind of got the scholarship to go to Regis University. That's where I met Jesuits and I get to know the society. One thing I remember very clearly is one thing stood out to me is the alternative spring break. So during spring break, we went to Mexico. So I signed up and we went to Mexico to help in the northern border at this town called Nueva Rosita. And basically, I think, the whole week we just carry rocks, to help the church. And there's just a sense of really sense of fulfillment. And for me, as more especially too, is finding a home. It's just kind of somehow connected with how I grew up. And then I come back and I think just wow. So I get to learn more about the society, and that's the time I enter is when the martyrs down in El Salvador have been killed, 1989. That's when I start. So I think the whole social justice, the whole sense of preferential to the poor was very, very strong. And then that whole movement, and then we did, in my senior year, we did what's called Romero House Project. To immerse ourselves in this Spanish-speaking barrio in Denver. So I was the first class of that. So with all of these things, right? So I said, wow, the society, Jesus, and this is what I was very drawn to. So that's my Jesuit vocation started.
Yeah, so it's kind of seeing the society immersed in the world,
Exactly.
really, and particularly with the poor.
Exactly.
It sounds like that was what really moved you.
Yeah, and the people like me. The immigrants. And then that's also the time that Father Rupe started JRS for the Vietnamese because the boat people started coming out. Yeah. So just learn more about the societies. It's wow, this is what we do. And things that's just wow, I want to join into this group of men.
And here you are.
Yeah.
How many years are you in now?
So about 30, I entered 1993. So this August will be 30 years.
All right, congratulations.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Not to make you feel too old.
No, never.
One of the most young at heart people you'll ever meet.
Thank you. Thanks, Danny.
Also probably one of the best athletes in the Society of Jesus right now.
Yes.
You are very kind.
Yes. We're just buttering you up.
Exactly.
Speaking of, so we mentioned at the beginning that you're our formation director.
Sure.
And that idea might not make much sense to our listeners or our viewers. So could you say a little bit what do you do as formation director? How do you envision your position, your ministry, really? Yeah.
No, I think my position, is the more official would be provincial assistant for formation, right? So I'm more like assistant to the provincial. And the provincial is more have so much thing to look over. So number one, I assist the provincial to go in this specific role in terms of our men in formation. So I'm in training. Part of it is to be, on track for ordained to be priesthood. And also we have brothers in the society. So toward about final incorporation, we call final vows, which is the end of our formation. I found my role is basically accompanying, you guys understand. Accompanying in terms of you have local superiors. I think it was very good. We have director of studies, but I think it's somebody to kind of overlook the whole journey and how is all these parts fit together. So that's one. And then also too, companion on the road, just share the stories. And then also too, just not only assistant to the provincial, but assistant to the man. So whatever they need, and maybe it's just sometimes a direction, or sometimes it's sorts of information, sometimes it's maybe it's just a word of encouragement, and sometimes it's just we just sit together and just be together, enjoy this life together. So I think it's just more this the role of being assistant to both, like connecting, provincial and keep him very much informed of where our men are, and the men feel like well taken care of in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I find really helpful in our meetings, because we usually meet with you once a year, right? And so that's the visitation you're making right now. So you sit down with Dan and I respectively, and we just talk about our lives, right? And one thing that I found really helpful about that relationship is just bringing my personal experiences to you, and then you kind of have this broader lens through which to help me reflect on and really come to process my own experience of ministry, right? And to draw those lines to sort of the greater work of the Jesuits, which is a worldwide organization, and even our province alone spans from Denver to Florida to Puerto Rico to Belize. So it's a huge area, right? And I found that really helpful in our conversations to kind of help bring those threads together and to point to where life is and where the blessings are. And so I'm grateful for you being able to walk with us in that regard.
No, I'm happy to hear that, Ian. And I think this thing is also too is, society, right? I received this similar kind of directions accompanying with my own formation assistant, right? So seeing that, and also sometimes I see it's like I'm probably a few steps ahead of you in terms of formation. So the thing
just a few,
in both
30 years, 5.5 years.
So those kind of things, right? So I mean, the mistake I make and the thing I did, sometimes do it right, sometimes do it well, sometimes not so well, and just sharing that. I think it's just that, right? And also the other thing too, I receive a lot of care and love from my own formation assistant. So that's what we're about. To kind of
pay it forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're also one of the busiest people I know, I think. So like this whole time you've been here, for example, you're running this online retreat for the Vietnamese community across America and Canada and elsewhere. And so I think that's part and parcel to, like, you're also leading the Office of Ignatian Spirituality out of Denver, Colorado. So what does that office do? Because it's fairly new, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's fairly new. And how has 2 years? Yeah. How has Belize been involved in that work? So what do you do, and how has Belize been involved?
I try to kind of run it underground a little bit, but now you kind of, bust it out.
Bring it down to the light.
No, I think here's the thing, right? I mean, when I just, this is the Office of Ignatian Spirituality is born of the long, discernment of the province, even before I come to the scene. So when I was in California, the commissions on mission and ministry from our province have recommended us to do something with spirituality outside the traditional institution of our province. So the Ignatian Spirituality Center in Grand Coteau, in Denver, and then, you're from St. Louis, the bridges, the light work, and all these, great work of our province. What is one kind of more like put it all under some kind of like umbrella that we can talk, we can work together? That's one. And focus on our spirituality. So, long story short, again, they recommend the establishment of the Office of Ignatian Spirituality. So when Tom Green, the provincial, came and he, charged me with this newly initiative office, right? And here's my vision I see. I think, I'll talk about, my background is in terms of Ignatian spirituality, and I'm very much interested in formation. So look at our formation. And over here, we have formation of Jesuit, which is very distinct and unique. I mean, this is where we are, And then also parallel with that, in our Ignatian family, we have our lay partners, collaborators. So how is this Office of Ignatian Spirituality form in terms of our Ignatian spirituality? Same formation, but the very distinct and different charism. So we see that, right? So for example, in Belize, we run a colleagues retreat. So connecting our colleagues here with St. John and then St. Martin of Porres and St. Peter Claver down at PG, to connect that with the network of colleagues of the rest of the province. So once a year we come down, we do colleagues retreat. and also to supporting, you were part of it, like the, retreat for the our leaders, teachers and catechists and church leaders in Punta Gorda.
It was great. Yeah. 8 days.
Yeah.
8 days.
We bring the team down and we'll do retreat and Ignatians. So now you were talking about like tonight and then ongoing. Last week we have the English Lenten retreat. And then this week we've been doing the Vietnamese Lenten retreat. So those are the kind of things we do, offer some alternative for people.
And if people here are interested in learning more, where should they go?
Okay, we are in the process, and I think we have the website. So we just brand new. So everything is just really
So what's it called?
new.
What's the website? We could probably link to it on our show.
Spaceofencounters.com.
Spaceofencounters.com.
So our motto is be the sacred space of encounter. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Very good.
Yeah.
Definitely. We'll make sure we get that up.
Yeah, please do.
For people to
That'd be
take a
great.
look.
Yeah, so all the programs and all the video that we do is on there. So thank you. Yeah.
Great.
Please check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Our penultimate question.
Okay.
So
We have a little bell going.
we'll edit that in. You've had a chance to spend time here in Belize. You were missioned here for a short time, right?
I was here for 3 months doing my what's called tertianship experiment. Yeah.
Down in PG. Is that
In
correct?
PG, yeah.
But you've also had a chance to visit many times.
Sure.
And so, given that you've spent some time here, what would you say are one or two gifts of the Belizean church that you've been able to kind of see and benefit from, and maybe that the rest of the church needs to know about, needs to hear about?
I think one of the things, I'm very struck by the diversity of the church here, right? In PG, we have the community of the Creole. I probably kind of left out some, right? The Garifuna, the English speaking and the Quechua, the Mayan. You talk about this whole diversity, and the faith of the people here is incredible, right? People walk to church from I don't even know how many kilometers walking to church, right? And then also too, they bring with the whole sense of the cultural. Yeah, think about the Mayan, the Garifuna, the singing. You were there at one of our, a mass, at the Garifuna mass. I think you just like so moved. Me as an Asian, just like amazed with like how just expressive, like body moving and things like that. And then the Mayan with the incense, and then the Spanish, the Creole. So I think that's a richness of the Belize. The Belizean church can show to us, it's kind of like the diversity doesn't mean to be divided, but it's be the richness of our church, right? One of the things too, I think the Belize, I think that's just like maybe draw a lot close to my heart, is very, very close to nature. You can see like all around here, the ocean, and then the sense of kind of like integrating with how do we celebrate in a very open-hearted and very genuine, but not a lot of, I would say, bell and whistle.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the Mayan incense that Quechua and Mopan people use, the copal incense. They gather themselves, right?
Exactly.
And it's been a part of their spirituality even since before the Catholic Church was here. But I love that aspect of our faith, which is able to draw in what's good from any culture, from any people, right? And to uplift it and to use it to glorify God.
Yeah, no, it's very much here.
Well, I guess that's time for our ultimate question. And this is one we will all answer, but you will answer first. And so, as I said, Hong is quite the athlete, played college tennis, which is kind of incredible that you didn't start playing until after you were 16, that you went all the way up to, so that just shows you how athletic he is. And so our question is geared towards you, and you're super competitive, we know that. So if you could face off against any athlete in the sport of your choice, who would it be and why?
Wow. I love and I adore Roger Federer. Yeah, I would die to kind of like have like just one game with him, right? I mean, he's just so graceful. I mean also too, what a gentleman he is as a player, and yeah, and then he just, the way he carry himself, and then he know himself, and I think he's a very competitor and very respectful of his opponents, and his tennis is, I think it's just very beautiful. So yeah, Roger Federer. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Dan, who do you got?
So my answer is kind of ridiculous. He's not my favorite basketball player, but I would pick LeBron James so that he could dunk on me. Because I know I wouldn't stand a chance, right? So it's like, but just to like have him like jump over me and dunk, that would be awesome. Then I could say, LeBron dunked on me. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
That's
how
my
many
answer.
people can say it? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I worked with somebody who played basketball in high school against LeBron. And his claim, his name's Dan too, his claim to fame is that he blocked one of LeBron's shots. So he's like, he didn't go on in basketball, but he did block LeBron one time. So I'll live vicariously through him.
There you go.
There you go. And you?
Yeah. How about yourself?
It's not a hard answer for me. You guys know what this will be. If anyone's who watched the intro to our show, it'll be Lionel Messi, of course.
Of course.
But playing against him, is, I would just I would actually try to play and not just get stuck watching, which a lot of his opponents do. But I was watching Argentina play. It was Caracas the other day, and he scored a hat trick. And I saw one of the defenders. It just every time, it was the same defender. He was just having a terrible day. And as the ball's rolling in the net 3 times in a row, he's just shaking his head. But he's gonna remember the day for the rest of his life as the day that Messi scored a hat trick on him. And then the goalkeeper at the end of that game swapped jerseys with Messi.
Oh, man.
So what a cool thing just to be able to say, I played against the best.
It's like they got dunked on, really.
It's like they got dunked on, seriously. And and they're proud of it. The goalkeeper wants the jersey of the guy who scored 3 goals on him. So I would love just to be on the same field as Messi. And like you were saying about Roger Federer, he seems to be just, by and large, except for the Netherlands game at the World Cup, Messi is by and large a very good sportsman. And so, after the Dutch game, look up the highlights. He gets a little fiery. But that's the passion of the World Cup, though. Yeah. So Lionel Messi, not a hard answer.
Yeah.
No.
Great. Well, 3 of the great athletes of this generation, or maybe
in the respective sports.
Generation
yeah,
too.
that's
so,
right.
Yeah. But thanks for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Ian, for having me.
Great to have you.
Always
great to chat with you. Yeah.
Sounds great.
And I hope our audience can get plugged into the Office of Ignatian Spirituality, which we'll link to, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Good to be with you guys. Yeah, and great to be here.
Great. And thank you all for joining us on our episode today. If you have any ideas for episode topics, we got like 6 left to fill. So if you're on Facebook or YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know what you would like us to cover, and we'll try to accommodate. So we'll see y'all next week.